Alright, welcome to the graphic design poster project. In this tutorial we're going to kind of go over the project and figure out how to create a unique 3D type. So the main thing is to have fun with this design, this project. I hope you have lots of fun exploring design through collage and paint and other fun style effects and adjustments. That's sort of the idea here. We're creating a very unique kind of fun design. Here's my example. Again, the idea here is that you are creating a poster that kind of demonstrates the possibilities of graphic design. So you want to collage images, you want to create 3D type, you want to add some cool lighting effects and adjustments and so forth. So basically, here's the criteria for the poster. Create a graphic design poster at tabloid size. That's the 11 inches by 17 inches at 300 resolution. You can do either vertical or horizontal in Photoshop. Include the actual words graphic design in your poster using 3D type in Photoshop. I'm going to demonstrate that today. And collage 4 or more photos for your design using Pexels photos, pexels.com, and utilize masks for the photos. You have to use masking. The actual photos could also come from other sites. If you're, for example, wanting to bring in imagery like the Wacom pin there, you could look on Pexels might not have that photo, and you could look online for a Wacom pin if you were going to do that for an illustration about graphic design tools. So you can utilize different graphic design tools in the idea of your image. I actually modeled that in 3D, so I didn't actually use a photo reference. I actually modeled it, but you could find a photo of that. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to include any of the following to add interest to your design: layer style effects, adjustments, paint effects, photo textures from like textureking.com, for example, shape tools, and blend modes. So we'll go over several of these in another tutorial. Again, here's my example, and then here's the link basically to follow on YouTube, which we're basically watching right now. But basically, go to your playlists and look for the graphic design poster. So let's look at Photoshop here, and here is again my final image, which we'll go over again in another tutorial. But the main thing we're going to cover is how to create this 3D type. I've kind of done it here in another image. I have essentially a rasterized version of this, a rendered version, which is it's not quite rendered. It took forever. I think my machine took like it seemed like it was like 10 or 15 minutes. So Photoshop's really bad at rendering what they call ray trace, which is really good renders at basically 3D applications are really good at that. So we have Maya. Autodesk Maya has the Arnold renderer, which is really good and fast. And so I'm going to show you a render of that pretty soon here. And then at the end here, we actually have the 3D text, which if I select it with my move tool, we'll go into our 3D sort of portal here. I'm going to go step by step how to create this though. So let's create a new document. Go into File, New, and then click on the tabloid here. You can go to Print and then click on Tabloid, and then choose 11 by 17, and then you can choose horizontal or vertical. I chose horizontal, and then click Create. So create a document like this, and then basically to create your type, you just select your type tool here, and I have red selected. You could pick whatever color you want in here. Pick a color that's other than black though. Don't pick black. Black just won't show the lighting very well. And then when you click in here, you get the lorem ipsum type, and it remembers the last settings I had. That's why it's so big. But then you can type in a word. I think this time I'll just type in design, because last one I did was graphic, and then click out. And you can go back to the settings here in the the character, and in here you can choose, for example, the type of font you want. I'm fine with Baskerville, but you could choose other fonts in here. And just don't use the standard Mira Pro. And then click in here to choose whatever font size. So 72 is the max, but you can highlight the value here and type a higher value, like 200 points, for example. That's where I had it before. Once you have this as type with color, then you can make it 3D. And the way you do that is you go up to the Type menu here and go down to Extrude to 3D. Once you do that, it'll ask basically, do you want to convert this to a 3D workspace? And mine's already been converted, but it's up here. It's a 3D versus the Essentials workspace. So just be in the 3D workspace, And the way it works is basically if you have any other tool selected, you don't have the options up here for to navigate in 3D. But once you click on the Move tool, you can then navigate. And you want to click on the far left icon here. And this one, right now I have the type selected. And the way I know that is down here in my 3D stack, there's this icon that says Design. And if I collapse it here, you can kind of see what it is. This is the letter. And then I have a light in the menu of the 3D, which is, if you click on this, you basically get the same light and you can pivot and rotate around it. And then you have your scene menu here. And that is what you're going to want to click on to navigate, really, to dolly around. So with this tool selected and scene selected, I can now rotate around and see my actual scene here, okay, in 3D space. So I'm just left clicking with the mouse again, and I can rotate around and find a cool angle that I like. Once I do that, I can go back to the light. Again, I can click on the light here, and now I can kind of pivot the light and move it around, rotate it however I want. Or if you're in the scene and you see the light icon here, you can click on it and that will activate the light. You can also click on the individual aspects. So I can click on the type here, and you'll see these little widgets that kind of appear. Like I can grab the arrow and kind of slide it back and forth in 3D space. You really don't need to do that though. The only thing you really need to do is select the scene and rotate to the angle you like, and then click on the light and adjust the light setting on there. So if I click on the light properties in the properties palette here, I can increase the intensity a little bit, and that will make it a bit brighter, or I could reduce it, so a little bit less than what I had there. And it seems to be a little slow right now. Let's see. And then the shadow, I can basically increase the softness of that by dragging this over, or reduce the softness and make it a little bit harder. So I'm going to keep it around, I don't know, around 3% looks like okay. And then when you click on the actual type in here in the 3D menu, you'll have the option to choose. You could click in here and choose a different color. And I notice this has been buggy at times, so it seems to be working okay now. But at times it has been buggy when you click in here. And so just understand that if that doesn't work, what you can always do is click on the edit source, and that will drop you back into type. So if I click this, you can see here I'm back into it opens up another file. And I can click in here and edit and choose whatever color I want. So if I want green, for example, and click OK, it'll update. And then I just close this little menu, and I have to click out first and then close it. And then you want to save the changes. You say yes, and it should update to the green color. I have noticed though that this has been a little buggy. It doesn't update, which it didn't. So then you have to click in here and try your best at trying to update it on here on the fly. So whatever color you like, it's okay. Once you have the type and the angle you want, click on, again, this design layer, which is basically the word design, and you have this extrude depth. So this guy represents the extrusion in 3D space. I can drag this slider backwards and forwards, kind of find an extrusion depth that I kind of like. I think that looks okay. Some of the other options, if you open the layer, you'll have underneath here different kinds of aspects to the materials. I honestly wouldn't get too much into this for this simple project, just because it can be quite intensive in terms of how many different materials and things you can kind of play around with. But they have all these different sliders, so you can make it a little more metallic looking, for example. But we're going to apply a texture to this, so we're not going to really utilize this much, just because the rendering takes so long. But once you do that, once you like the angle and everything, you click on your layers tab here, and then you can right click in here, and I'm going to duplicate this layer for a second and click OK, just so that we have two versions of the same type, so I can demonstrate something here. Okay, so now I can right click on this one, and I'm going to turn off the other one temporarily, and I'm going to right click on here and go down to rasterize 3D. And you'll see here what it has done. It's made it into a raster image. Now the softness isn't great in here or here, and so that's where that shadow lighting can work better. Now you can choose to render your image, so you could go back to 3D and choose this render 3D layer. But I'll be honest, I mean, it took me like, I don't know, 10-15 minutes to get the result that I have here, and it still wasn't finished rendering. And you can see how nice and soft the shadows are in here, and there's a level of detail, but it's not even quite finished. But this one wasn't horrible with the graphic. You can see it's a little bit more rigid, the shadow there. That ray trace engine in Photoshop is just not great compared to a 3D application. And here's the regular 3D type. And so if we could just render that on the fly, it would be so much better, but unfortunately you just can't do it. So there are a few other options I want to kind of share though. When you go to your scene here, you can click on this, and there's this option in the 3D layer. If you click on scene here, you can click up under custom and you can switch to a different kind of render, so shaded illustration for example. And it won't take that long usually, but you can see here it's now got a shaded illustration look. And you could switch to that or a solid wireframe. You can see the effect there for that. And or you could do the default, which is kind of a shaded, just a nice shaded illustration basically. That's where I usually keep it at. And then if you go to back to the design and click on the light here, again, I think just reducing the shadow to 0 will give it a sharper edge, but it will render much faster when you go to layers and we rasterize this layer. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer again, click OK, just so we can have a comparison. And again, it is just running a little slow, so I turn off that layer and then right click on this one, and I'm going down to rasterize 3D. And so we'll zoom in on this one, and you can see it's not horrible. I mean, it's actually not bad, the actual render there compared to the 3D. Let me move this one up out of the way and then turn on the actual 3D. So it's actually not horrible. So I think just right clicking and rasterizing is not a bad idea. I just made accidentally a copy. So with this layer selected, you can bring in a texture and clip it. So on this layer here, I have this metal texture from, I think it was textures.com. But you can drag it over to the document and drag it down. And remember, you just have to clip it by holding the Alt key between the two layers. So when I clip it, it's now inside there. And then I just have to change the blend mode. So overlay usually works pretty well. Multiply also looks really good, usually for texture. And then you can add a mask if you want to paint out parts. But that's basically what I want to share with you is how to do this. Let's switch over to Maya here real quick. And I just want to share this render that I just did in Maya. So this is a 3D application you can download for free as a student. And I wanted to see in terms of rendering time how this would work. And this is a pretty big image, and it took about 15 minutes to render. So maybe the other image, because the size is 11 by 17, maybe it's not super slow. It just seems awfully slow to me. I don't know. But if you zoom in here, you can see how nice detailed it is. I just think the 3D applications, the renders are much better because they're designed for 3D versus a program like Photoshop, which does have 3D. So if you just use the short key of basically right-clicking on the 3D type and rasterizing it and then add texture, it still looks kind of cool. It's got the texture showing through, and it makes the image quality a lot better. And then when you composite it and add effects and so forth, you get something like this. So until next time, see you soon in Adobe Photoshop. Cheers!